Okay, we can get started. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see you guys. So today we are going to be talking about myofascial massage. We are starting in our Beck books today on page 607. We are starting about halfway down chapter 15. Chapter 15 starts out by talking about neuromuscular massage. We use that for a separate section on neuromuscular massage. So we're picking up about halfway through the chapter, but we are going to start on page 607, and we will begin by talking about the intention of therapeutic of myofascial massage. But before we talk about the intention of myofascial, the first thing I want to make sure that we have a solid handle on is what is fascia? What is it that we are focusing on working with? So tell me, have either of you guys done myofascial in hands-on class yet, or talked about fascia, or know anything about fascia?
I did, personally.
I did not. I had just started massage like right when everything uh, started and everybody did the leave of absence or so I haven't done any hands-on at all.
Crystal, how long had you been in school before all this stuff started?
Oh, wild. That's what I'm saying. Wait, let me just. Hi. That's why I'm saying, like, I was in muscles already, and we were ready, like, after muscle, we were going to be boot campers, and we were, like, finishing muscles. So, yeah. So I had done a little bit of myofascia. It's just, like, slight tugging, I guess you could say pulling of the muscles and all that, like, slowly, to stretch out the fascia and prepare them for a good massage. But yeah, we were finishing muscles and we were going to be boot campers within like 2 weeks until this whole thing happened. So
Yeah. Unfortunately, so the way we go through the program is a little bit different between Clearwater and Fort Myers. And when all this went down, I took all the massage students for both campuses, and I didn't pay any attention to what you guys had done or hadn't done. I just looked at your hours and just threw you
hours,
into
yeah.
a class strictly based on hours. So everybody is in a position, all the students are in a position where there's a little bit of stuff that they have to repeat that they've done already. There's a couple of students that got thrown into something they had not started yet. But when we get to the end of, I think we're in B right now. I'll have to double check you individually, Crystal, to see, because I may need to switch you into a different section. Just put you into a different class. Let me make myself a note so I don't forget.
Yeah, because a few of us in our class, Whitney, you've seen her in this class before, section B. She's in the same boat as me. I mean, we haven't complained because it's a great, like, it's great to go over this stuff with another teacher. But, yeah, I know Kayla's another student. She's in section C though. I don't know the difference between ours and that, but she's on the same boat as us. She's like, wait, why am I in a different class than you guys?
Well,
I don't know if
your hours, you guys don't have the same number of hours.
Yeah, it's by hours. That's what we were telling each other in the group chat.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't pay hardly any attention to grades or what you guys had done. Because I had a stack this high of students that I had to assign.
Much for you to do. I wouldn't expect you to spend like days doing that.
And that was my other thing, is that I'm not on the Fort Myers campus, so I don't know you guys like I know my Clearwater students. And my Clearwater students, I can look and say, nope, she goes here, he goes here. But with Fort Myers, I just looked at hours, and based on how many hours you had, I stuck you into either A or B or C. So,
right.
And if I had had more than a week to get the massage program running online and get everybody sorted and get it started and start teaching, then obviously I could have done more if I had more time. But I got this entire massage program up and running online in 4 days. And that was me working 12, 14-hour days for like a week straight. So I will be the first one to tell you that it is not perfect. I will be the first one to tell you that I made mistakes, and I'm staring some of those mistakes in the face. But when I do get the time to do it properly, when we start rolling out online learning permanently, it will be much more organized than it is now. I will have the benefit of hindsight at that point, that I've done it before, I messed it up, I fixed it, now I know what to do next time. But I'll
There's no
double check.
complaints on our side. There's no complaining. I'm not trying to complain, trust me. Because, like I said, this is a really good review for me because I don't want to go into the MBLEX kind of iffy on everything. So there is a good review for me, but like, yeah, everyone's just a little confused on that whole situation.
I know it's confusing, and trust me, I've had tons of students reaching out to me, just wanting clarification on things here and there. But like I said, at the end of the day, the important thing is that your education keeps moving forward. It may not be stuff that's new to you, but it is a good review. And remember, the MBLEX doesn't care about COVID-19 or lockdowns or whatever. So when you go to sit for that exam, even if you had to repeat a couple of things, all the better. Because, if you did something 12 weeks ago and you basically forgot it, it's good that we're going through this stuff now to get a little bit of a refresher, a little bit of a review.
Yeah.
Well, you guys know that you can always reach out to me. There's my phone number, my email, you guys, and I'm openly trying to communicate with you guys. I understand that this is very new and I make mistakes and you guys make mistakes. So if there's something going on, just reach out to me. I've already had several students that they completed the wrong assignments. So the stuff that they were supposed to do, I extended due dates for them. I'm trying to be very patient, very understanding. So if there's anything going on, just reach out to me. Anything I can do to help, I'll help. I'm not, this isn't the time for me to be like a hard ass trying to, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. You guys have all been very, very patient with me. It's only fair that I return the favor. If you guys have anything that I can help you out with, let me know. I'll help you.
Cool. Thank you.
Of course, of course. So as we were saying about fascia, you were absolutely right. Fascia is a connective tissue, and it goes by a lot of different names. And a lot of anatomy students get bogged down with all this terminology. There's all these different words. But one of the things about fascia is it's just connective tissue. That's all it really is. And it goes by a lot of different names. So as we are going through anatomy, you'll notice a lot of these terms, they are fascia. You've heard of a lot of these before. You just learned them by a different name. So to give you a couple of examples, by what I mean, you guys have all done muscular system, right? You guys learned about how muscles contract. Lauren, you haven't gotten there yet?
No, I had just started massage like literally the week that all the online, like the distance learning started. So I had just finished skin and was like new to massage, brand new. Yeah.
So it sounds like you should have been in the intro section then, not in like level 1 or section A rather than section B.
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure. Because like there's, I think, 3 other girls in the same thing as me, and I don't think any of them are like, because when they were asking about assignments and stuff, they're like, oh, like, are you doing this? And I was like, no. So I'm not sure.
Let me ask you this. Have you done the cell?
No, I did like history of massage, and that's it. That's all I did like in person. Because I had, like I said, literally just moved to massage like the week before distance learning started.
So I think you're definitely in the wrong section. All right. I'm gonna look at it earlier or later on today, but I might have to move you guys around a little bit. If I do end up having to move you into a different section, I do want you to understand you will get credit for whatever you have done already. You're basically, the path forward will just change for you. So whatever we're doing next, instead of doing B, I'm going to shift you to a different path, so then you'll do A instead. But please
Okay.
make sure that whatever you have submitted to me, whatever you've turned in, you will get credit for it. You're not just
Okay.
being, kicked out to the wolves or anything. So,
Okay.
okay. So in that case, Lauren, this will be good information, but a lot of this is kind of based on things that you haven't quite learned yet. So,
Yeah, I was reading it and I was like,
yeah. So, I tell you what though. Since I am gonna switch you, don't worry too much about this material because when I switch you, you're not going to be on the hook for myofascial stuff anymore. But
okay.
hang out in this class for today because I'll make sure that you get the extra time for being in the web lecture. And it will just be
Okay.
kind of a taster for what's coming. And it may help give you a little bit of context. So as you move into skeletal or muscular system and whatever comes next, you'll at least have some knowledge of it.
Okay.
So as we are learning about muscles, we learn that muscle cells are bundled together. They are wrapped in connective tissue. We called it endomysium. Then we take those bundles, we bundle them together, we wrap them in another layer of connective tissue. We called it perimysium. Then the entire muscle, we put all those bundles together, we create the whole muscle, then the entire muscle is wrapped in a layer of connective tissue called epimysium. When we talked about the skeletal system, we said that bones have a thin fibrous membrane on the outside of them. It is called periosteum. Periosteum is the tissue that the muscle actually connects to. If you have done the nervous system, we will recall that the brain and spinal cord are wrapped in layers of connective tissue called the meninges, right? We had the dura mater, pia mater, and arachnoid mater surrounding the brain and spinal cord. Those meninges are also made of connective tissue. The heart does not just sit naked in your chest. It is wrapped in a protective membrane called the pericardium. The lungs are encased in a protective membrane called the pleura. Now, why am I going through this recap with you guys? What you guys notice is each of these organs is being wrapped in connective tissue, and we are giving each of these tissues their own distinct name. What I am telling you is all of these are made out of the same material, and that material is fascia. Fascia is a connective tissue. It is one of the most abundant tissues in the body. It is also one of the most versatile. We see fascia coming in a lot of different shapes and sizes, coming in a lot of different textures and consistencies. Basically, what fascia is a connective tissue that is composed of fibers of protein suspended in a liquid matrix. So it is an interesting blend of solid proteins and a fluid component. Now, the fluid component and the fibrous component are, again, made of different materials. So let's look at the fibrous component, the solid component. The solid components are collagen, elastin, and reticulin. These are protein fibers. Collagen is for strength. Elastin gives it elasticity, which is the property that once it has been stretched, it snaps back to its original shape, right? Elasticity doesn't mean it will stretch. Elasticity means it snaps back afterwards. So we could call that the property of elasticity. and reticulin gives it structure. Reticulin forms kind of the framework, right? The skeleton that the collagen and elastin fibers are laid onto. So we have the basic format. Now, the beauty of fascia is, since it comes in so many different types, the way we make these different types of connective tissue is essentially by tweaking the ratios of how much collagen to how much elastin to how much reticulin. So these numbers don't mean anything, right? I'm just going to make up some numbers just to give you an illustration. So if collagen to elastin to reticulin, let's say it was 10 to 2 to 5, well, that's going to be one kind of connective tissue, right? You've got a lot more collagen, a tiny bit of elastin, and a decent amount of reticulin. If we tweak this up again and we say a lot of collagen, no elastin, no reticulin, this would be something like scar tissue. If we were to say 5 and 5 and 5, so these are very, very well balanced, we could be looking at something like the dermis of the skin, right? So something that's very resilient, very strong, very elastic. So by tweaking the amount of collagen to elastin to reticulin, we are able to produce many different types of connective tissue, but all of it falls under the umbrella of fascia. So we see fascia almost everywhere throughout the body. Anywhere there is connective tissue, there is fascia. So we have the solid component, and then we have the fluid component, the liquid component. The fluid component of fascia is known as ground substance. The ground substance is the way that materials are able to be transferred through the fascia. So in order for a material to diffuse through the body, it has to diffuse through something, some kind of medium. We could talk about it diffusing through blood plasma. We could talk about diffusion through water. In this case, we're talking about diffusion through ground substance. This liquid material that kind of bathes those fibers of the fascia, it keeps them nice and moist. This allows materials like nutrients, oxygen, waste products to have a material through which they can diffuse, so they can get sent out to wherever they need to go. Now, the important thing about ground substance and about fascia in general is that fascia is a dynamic type of tissue, right? It's changing a lot. It changes its shape. Those little strings of fibers can be stretched and twisted, and then the tissue snaps back to its original shape. When we are talking about this ground substance and the fibers that make up fascia, there is a quality that we associate with fascia, and this quality is, this quality is known as thixotrophy. So thixotrophy is a word, and the definition will kind of throw you off. So let me give you an example first, and then once you've got the example in your mind, this word will make a little more sense to you guys. How many of you guys have ever played with Play-Doh? Ever in your life, right? So when you take the Play-Doh out of its tub, right, it's soft, it's malleable, you play with it, you can change its shape, right? You sculpt it into your little masterpiece, and then you stick it on your dresser, and you let it sit there for a week. After you've let that little thing sit there for a week, when you pick it up, it is not soft anymore. It is not malleable anymore. It is firm, it is hard, it is difficult to change its shape, right? But if you keep working with it, right, if you keep messing with it, eventually it will warm up, it will soften, and you'll be able to get it moving again. It will turn into Play-Doh again. This quality, that when it is warm and when it is manipulated, it stays nice and loose and soft. But in the absence of warmth, in the absence of manipulation, it becomes cold and it becomes firm and it becomes less able to be manipulated. This is thixotrophy. So again, the definition of thixotrophy is the quality of a substance to be loose and malleable in the presence of warmth and manipulation, and to lose its elasticity, to lose its malleability in the absence of warmth and manipulation. Fascia has this quality of thixotrophy. It is thixotrophic. We say that if you manipulate the fascia, like through massage, then the fascia warms up, it softens, it is able to be manipulated. But if you don't get massages, if you don't put heat onto the tissue, then the tissue gets cool. It starts to harden. It becomes more difficult for this tissue to move. Have we not just described muscle adhesions, right? When you put your hands on someone, the muscles are cold and they are firm and they don't really move a whole lot. So we keep working with them, right? We keep massaging the tissue. Eventually it warms up, it gets softer. And by the time we are done with the massage, that muscle is loose and supple and just nice and malleable. So the quality of thixotrophy is the quality of fascia. It hardens when it is cold. It softens when it is warm. We change heat from cold by increasing circulation, by performing massage techniques on the tissue. Good stuff so far? Cool. So let's catch up on just a couple of highlights before we get too far ahead of ourselves. On page 607, I want you to highlight the second sentence at the very, very top of the page. So it begins, myofascial massage refers to bodywork techniques that are directed toward and have the goal of maintaining or restoring functional capacity of the myofascial system. Highlight. Myofascial techniques are intended to loosen, broaden, or stretch fascia and release fascial adhesions, whether site-specific or general, superficial or deep. So what we are trying to do through myofascial massage is to restore mobility and function to the tissue. We're trying to release fascial restrictions that cause postural distortions. So these tight muscles pull their body out of alignment. It pulls them into bad posture. We're trying to correct that. This also will lead to pain, poor cellular nutrition. If you reduce circulation, the cells can't get the oxygen and nutrients they need. So by increasing circulation, we improve cellular metabolism. And lots of other dysfunctions that can be caused by restrictions in the myofascia. So the principles of myofascial massage are pretty straightforward. There are 3 of them. Under principles of myofascial, I want you to highlight these 3. Number 1, given the correct conditions, the body can heal itself. Number 2, the body structure and the body function are interrelated. Structure and function operate together. And number 3, the body is a whole, interconnected by fascia. Remember, we saw fascia everywhere. We saw it around the brain. We saw it permeating muscles. We saw it on the outside of the bones. We saw it surrounding the heart. Right? We gave each of those different types of fascia their own name. Pericardium, periosteum, endomysium. But it is all fascia. Remember, you guys, the body does not care what we call it. We are the ones that go through and give it names and draw lines and say, this is one thing and this is another. The body doesn't care what we call it. The body does what it does. We are the ones cutting open the body, looking around and putting names onto things. So we give things specific names so that we can talk precisely about what we are seeing in the body. But the body is not going to create all new material to do the same job. It's going to tweak the ratio of some proteins and boom, you've got a different kind of tissue, but it's all fascia. So fascia is connective tissue that is composed of fibers and cells suspended in a matrix of ground substance. Remember, ground substance is the liquid part of the tissue. Highlight. Collagen fibers are strong, yet resistant to injury. They are the most abundant fibers in connective tissue. Connective tissue has the most collagen, more collagen than any other kind of protein. Reticular fibers are web-like and provide structural support. And as the name implies, elastic fibers have the ability to stretch and then return to their original shape. Being elastic does not mean you stretch, right? Silly putty will stretch, but if you let silly putty go, it does not snap back like a rubber band would. A rubber band is elastic. Silly putty is just stretchy, but it does not snap back. Next paragraph, highlight. Fibroblasts are the most abundant cells in connective tissue. They produce a wide variety of substances and elements that make up connective tissue. The most common are a variety of collagen fibers. Pause highlighting there. All right, so as with many things in medicine, the name of something is telling you something important about that thing. So when we look at this word fibroblasts, the most abundant cells in connective tissue, what does the name tell me? The first part of this word, fiber or fibro, means fiber. I know, I'm blowing your minds right now. The second part of the word is blast. Now, in English, we think of blast as like a big boom, but this word is sourced from ancient Greek. And in ancient Greek, the word blast means to germ or to bud or to sprout. So we could look at this word and say a fibroblast is a budding or a sprouting of fibers. Fibroblasts are cells that produce the fibers of fascia, collagen, elastin, and reticulin. They are literally spewed out of the cell like some kind of crazy biological silly string, sprayed out into the tissues to go do whatever it is that that fiber needs to do. So a fibroblast, the name of the cell is telling you it is creating fibers. These are cells that create the protein fibers used in fascia. Now, these fibers will go on to become multiple types of connective tissue. We are not just limited to fascia here, you guys. We are also talking about ligaments. We are talking about tendons. We are talking about the meninges around the brain and spinal cord and nerves. We are talking about spongy tissue in the lungs. We are talking about myofascial within the muscle, just to name a few. These guys are everywhere. They are especially abundant in connective tissue. They are the most abundant cell found within connective tissue. All right. So at the bottom of page 607, the last paragraph starts with the fibroblasts and mast cells. We're going to start highlighting there. We are going to highlight the rest of this paragraph. The fibroblasts and the mast cells produce the ground substance that is composed of various polysaccharides, including heparin sulfate, chondroitin sulfate, keratin sulfate, and hyaluronic acid. These colloids form a glue-like gel that both holds cells together and provides an environment for the movement and exchange of the many nutrients and substances required for cells to thrive. Mast cells produce histamines and bradykinin, which play an important part in the inflammatory process when tissues are damaged. When tissues are damaged or stressed, a release of histamines causes blood vessels to dilate and become more permeable, allowing fluids and repair cells into the area as part of the inflammatory process that is vital to the healing process. So when we trigger inflammation, the blood vessels dilate, they become larger. This makes it easier for substances like white blood cells to exit the blood vessel and go out into the body to do their job. When blood vessels constrict or get smaller, it is more difficult for substances to leave the blood vessel. Now, your book will go on and begin to give you very interesting breakdowns of what collagen is and what it's made of, right? Well, it's a protein, it's made of amino acids, yada, yada, yada. But that's a little beyond our scope as massage therapists. It's not super important for us to know what makes up collagen so much as we know what collagen is. It is a protein, it is strong, it's found in skin and connective tissues, it provides strength to the tissue. We're generally good to leave it at that. Okay. Does anyone have any questions so far before we move on to the next section?
Nope.
All right, we're going to skip ahead to page 609. The first section on page 609 is titled Fascial Dysfunction. Now, fascia, as we said, is pervasive throughout the body. It's everywhere. It functions pertaining to things like structure, support, locomotion. Locomotion is walking, moving your body around. Fluid transport of nutrients and cellular wastes, protection against bacterial invasion, tissue repair. This tissue has a lot of jobs to perform in the body. So let's move down to the fascial system. The system is an integrated three-dimensional connective tissue network. Highlight this. The fascial system is an integrated three-dimensional connective tissue network that is continuous throughout the body, from the top of the head to the tip of the toes. When we say that tissue is continuous, what we mean is, again, we will go through the body and give different things different names, but the body does not care what we call it. When we say tissue is continuous, we mean that one type of tissue turns into another type of tissue, and then that tissue turns into another type of tissue. So there is no distinction between tissue types in the body, or connective tissue types in the body. We are the ones that do tests and determine differences and give different things different names. But when we say tissue is continuous, we mean the tissue doesn't stop. It just keeps on going, turning into other types of tissue as it goes. For the fascial system to be one integrated three-dimensional system, what we mean is fascia surrounds every organ, every muscle, every bone, every nerve, every blood vessel. All of your major organs are wrapped in fascia. They are wrapped together in sacs like the peritoneum or the pericardium or the pleura that hold organs together and keep them in their place so that as you run and jump and do yoga, your organs aren't, migrating around your belly. This tissue supports and separates and connects every cell, every muscle, every bone, every nerve, every organ of the body. The myofascial system, when we use that term myofascial, we are talking about all the connective tissue that is associated with skeletal muscles of the body. So we are talking about tendon, ligaments, their attachments to bone, as well as the muscles and other structures. The myofascial system also includes the muscle tissue and the neuromuscular connections, where the nerve plugs into that muscle. Muscle and fascia are anatomically inseparable. You cannot separate muscle from fascia. You have to deal with the two together. Even if we pulled out a really sharp scalpel and a really powerful microscope, you will never be able to fully separate muscle from fascia. These two are interwoven together. Now, I don't know if any of you guys are vegetarians, but if you've ever eaten meat, you have seen fascia in the meat that you're eating. If you've ever made barbecue chicken or pulled pork or something like that, when you start shredding meat and you look closely at it, meat looks like a bunch of tiny strings that are all bundled together. And as you pull those strings apart, you see these thin, delicate fibers almost look like spider webs that are woven between those strings of meat that are holding them together. The strings of meat is the muscle tissue, but those thin spider web-like webs of tissue that are holding all of those muscle fibers together, that is fascia. That is fascia. So if you've seen that before, then you understand what I mean when I say you can't separate muscle and fascia. These two guys are just stuck together. There is no way to deal with one without the other. So when muscle tissue being composed of contractile muscle fibers that are organized by fascia. Remember, we bundle cells together, we wrap them in connective tissue. We take those bundles, we bundle them together, we wrap them in connective tissue. We take those bundles, we bundle them together, we wrap the whole muscle in connective tissue. This connective tissue starts around the entire muscle and it goes all the way down to the cellular level. Each muscle cell is wrapped in its own layer of this fascia, this connective tissue. So if the fascial system is an integrated three-dimensional network surrounding the entire body, then if we develop some kind of restriction or adhesion in the fascia, then it will limit the rest of the body's ability to move. It will limit range of motion. It will limit the muscle's ability to fully contract or fully stretch. And to give you a real world example, if you're walking down a hallway and your big sweater gets caught like on a doorknob or something, you'll notice, and you guys can see me, if this part of my sweater got caught, right? And then, it's caught, it's pulled tight. My opposite arm can't move as freely because the restriction on one side limits the movement of something on the other side, right? So if this area here is pulled tight, it's super restricted. Now up here, I can't raise my arm up all the way. I have lost function as a result of a fascial restriction. Now, this was a big example, but these things happen all the time. We see this as massage therapists all the time. People that sit at a computer all day, it pulls their shoulders forward. They hold their head forward. As they're typing on their computer all day, this area of their back starts to become restricted. They're not able to move their shoulders around. Eventually, they go walking around life with their head held forward, way out above their feet, not positioned over the shoulders where the head belongs. So since we are dealing with fascial restrictions, we would need to use special techniques that are effective on the fascia to loosen those restrictions, to restore mobility and restore function and range of motion. Fascial restrictions can not only limit muscle movements, but remember, fascia is everywhere and it supports all structures in their place. All structures, even blood vessels and nerves. So if there's a fascial restriction around a blood vessel, it could pinch off that blood vessel, reducing blood flow to an area. If it wraps around nerves and entraps a nerve, Lauren and Crystal, I know you guys have not had me for very many anatomy lessons, but Adrian, I know you have. Adrian, can you tell me what is the one thing more than anything else that I have taught you about nerves? What is the one thing that nerves do not like?
They don't like being touched.
Exactly. Nerves do not like to be touched. Anything that is going to put pressure on a nerve, they don't want to be touched or compressed or impinged or squeezed or have any kind of pressure put onto them. If you squeeze a nerve, it hurts. So, if a fascial restriction is putting pressure onto a nerve, it will elicit pain. If a blood vessel becomes entrapped in a fascial restriction, it will reduce blood flow to any area downstream of that blood vessel. A lack of blood flow leads to a condition that we know as ischemia. This is nothing new. We talk about ischemia within the first month of massage. right? How a muscle becomes tight, it clamps off its own blood supply, it starts filling up with its own waste products because it's not getting nutrients in, it's not getting waste products out, and ischemia leads to pain. So we are looking at pain and loss of function that are cropping up in multiple areas around the body, all due to what could be one single fascial adhesion or restriction. So what do we do? If we know, okay, cool, this client has a myofascial restriction, got it. What's my next step? Well, myofascial techniques are specially designed to affect the myofascial system. Now, as we are going through myofascial techniques in massage or in this class, one thing I just want to make it clear, this becomes a lot clearer in the hands-on room when you can see the techniques that you're using on a client, you see the results. Here we are just going to have to kind of use our imaginations a little bit. But if I could give you one nice clean example that you guys can even experience for yourself right there on your couches. The way myofascial techniques work, we are using no lubrication at all. We are not gliding over the skin. We are pulling the skin as a unit with our hands, very similar to a friction stroke. Myofascial massage is a little more than a therapeutically applied Indian burn. You guys ever had an Indian burn before? Does anybody not know what I'm talking about when I say Indian burn?
Yeah.
Okay. So grab your arm just like this, right? And rotate the skin around your arm, right? Like that. But then let your hand slide around your arm back and forth. You notice how this is not comfortable at all. It kind of hurts. Welcome to the world of myofascial. This is therapeutically applying Indian burns. And you can even note it in just that little bit. I don't know if you guys can see on the camera. It's already getting a little red just from that little bit that I did. But myofascial techniques are intended to create a movement between these two layers of tissue. So as these layers of fascia cool down, right, and they start to stick to each other, they don't slide past each other like they're supposed to. So we come in and we manually create movement between those layers of tissue. This not only will loosen up the fascia and allow more movement to happen, but it also generates heat. So the tissue will become much warmer to the touch, and it will start to become red as blood floods into the area. Now, to begin with, we usually start with a visual inspection of the tissue. We just look at the tissue and see what it looks like. We could look at the tissue itself. We could look at their posture. Posture will give you a lot of clues about what kind of restrictions are going on in the body. How a person holds their body tells you when something is tight. So if I'm standing here in my normal posture and I'm leaned to one side is restricted. It's pulling me down, which means the other side is overstretched. It's long and it's weak. So at the bottom of page 611 under postural visual inspection of the tissue, I want you to start highlighting at the beginning. Observing posture provides clues to restriction in tissues. Imbalances in body posture, such as a tilted pelvis or stooped or rotated shoulder, a protracted head, or an elevated ilium or shoulder, are all indications of restricted myofascia. So when you guys look at me, my shoulders are relatively even. But if one shoulder were a little higher than the other, you guys notice if I stand here, one shoulder is markedly higher than the other. This is indicating a restriction. This tissue at the top, my upper trapezius muscle, all this tissue on the top is contracted. It's lifting and holding that shoulder higher than the other shoulder. This is indicating a fascial restriction. We could spot this in the shoulders. We could see it in the hips. We could see it in the head, right? When everything is normal, the head should sit squarely on the shoulders. But if the shoulders round forward, the flexors engage, we start to hold our head in this position. This puts a lot of strain on the front of the neck as well as on the back of the neck. These kinds of imbalances in the body are telling us there is a fascial restriction somewhere. This system is not loose like it's supposed to be. It is cold and is starting to harden and freeze that tissue in place because fascia is thixotrophic. Now, when we start massaging the tissue, we warm it up, it will become loosened, and we can start making changes. But if there is no warmth and no manipulation, the tissue stays cold and it becomes more and more inflexible. So to do a basic postural assessment, you want to assess the client standing. You always begin with the feet. Feet are the foundation of the body, and posture starts in the foundation. We start looking at the feet, and we work our way up. So you want to make sure that the feet are spaced about shoulder width apart. You don't want the feet way out to the sides or right close together. You want to make sure that the feet are pointed forward, right? If their feet kind of stick out, like their footprints kind of stick out at a 45-degree angle, this tells me that their legs are laterally rotated. So their feet stick outward as the legs rotate. We want to check the knees. Make sure the knees are about even. Look at the hips. Put your fingers on the ASIS on both sides and make sure that those bony landmarks are even. If one of them is higher than the other, then that pelvis is tilted to one side. We can also check for a pelvic tilt by examining the ASIS and the PSIS at the same time. So you check the front and the back. Again, they should be about even. If one of them is higher than the other, then that tells you that those hips are rotated in one direction or another. The more common one that you will see is an anterior rotation, which once it's like Instagram booty. So when the hips rotate forward, now the lower back has to contract to keep the upper body erect, and you end up with this very nice butt kind of sticking out. It's not supposed to look like this. Normal hips should look something like this, right? The hips are stacked front to back, but with an anterior pelvic tilt, we end up with a posture that looks like this. We also want to make sure that we're looking at the rib cage. We want to look at the shoulders, and then we can look at the head and the neck. Make sure the neck is straight, right? The head is on straight. What you're looking for would be something like this. This is called a lateral tilt. So the head is tilted to one side. Or we could also be looking at a rotation. So they're looking straight at you, they're talking to you, but their head is rotated to the side. Right? My shoulders are squared forward, but my head is turned to the side. Now, some things you will be able to fix, other things you will not be able to fix. I have a really, really good example of how sometimes, even the best massage therapist, you just won't be able to accomplish anything with your client. Let me give you a story. Several years ago, I was teaching a continuing education class. I was teaching postural assessment. And what we were looking at was how, when they have a specific kind of restriction, how do we go about releasing that restriction? So all the students in the class stand up in front of a grid, and we've got a gravity line pulled up so that we can see, we've got a reference to gravity. We have a straight line that shows me how gravity is going to pull. We've got a grid behind her so that we can see any imbalance in the body. Now, as she's standing there, her shoulders are square, she's got good posture all the way up. But once we get to the head, her head is tilted to the side. Or I'm sorry, rotated. Her head is rotated to the side. So she's standing here kind of like this and looking straight ahead at me. Now, I didn't want to know anything about her personal life because I just want to look at the evidence. I don't want to know the story behind it. I just want to see what I see. And the main thing that I noticed was she had a head rotation. Her head was rotated, and she's looking straight ahead at me. So once I've identified her postural distortion, I would tell her what muscles that I would work on in a massage, right? I would work on SCM, scalenes, upper trapezius, anything that's going to be involved with rotation of the head. Once I have my treatment plan in my mind, then I asked her, what do you do for a living? Why, do you have your keyboard here and your monitor over here, so you're always turning your head to one side? And she says, no, David, I was born blind in my left eye. So because of this, my field of vision is cut off. So in order for me to see everything, I have to turn my head to the side. So my good eye is focused in the center of my field of vision. Otherwise, if I look at you straight on, my vision cuts off a little past the halfway mark, and I can't see anything on my left side. Now let me ask you this, you guys. If she was born blind in one eye, is massage going to fix that? Is there anything a massage therapist can do to fix the damage to her eye? No. And if I corrected her posture so that now her head was on straight, right, for lack of a better term, if I had worked out the muscles in her neck and she was holding her head straight, she wouldn't be able to live her life. My point here is, it doesn't matter what I did as a massage therapist. When she gets off my table, she is always going to continue rotating her head to one side so that she centers her good eye in the middle of her field of vision. In this instance, I can loosen up the muscle, I can restore circulation, but I will never fix that posture pattern. That posture pattern will repeat for the rest of her life. So, I tell you this story because it's important for massage therapists to understand you're not going to be able to fix everything. Not every problem has an easy solution. So this was just a really good example of me, despite all my experience and all my education in massage, as good as I am at doing massages, that is a problem that I will never be able to fix for her. Because as long as she stays blind in one eye, she will continue rotating her head, throwing off her posture, because she's got to center her field of vision. It was a very good lesson for me to learn, and I love telling that story every time I teach myofascial massage, because it's important for you guys to understand fascial restrictions and postural imbalances and all these things that we're trying to fix. That's all well and good, but you're not going to be able to fix everything. And sometimes you are just, all you'll be able to do is loosen up a muscle or improve circulation. You may not always be able to fully fix the problem, and that's okay. It's important for us to understand when we have limitations. And that story just beautifully illustrated that was a hard boundary. There was just nothing I would be able to do that would ever fix the situation for her. I can loosen up the neck, I can do stretches and stuff to increase range of motion and circulation. But as soon as she gets off my table, no matter how good of a job I did, her head will always turn back to the side. So, good examples, good stories. So some of the techniques that we will use in myofascial are going to be tiny changes to some techniques that we already use in Swedish massage or in other modalities. One that I like to do in almost any massage that I perform, I always start with a technique known as fascial glide. Fascial glide is a technique that allows us to determine how movable the tissue is. We can start to determine where restrictions are in the body. And fascial glide is simple enough to do. Before you lubricate anything, before you put any lotion on the client, you start on their dry back, you use dry hands. Place your hands on the client's back, and again, you're not gliding over the skin, you're moving the skin as a unit over the deeper structures. You slide the skin down towards the hips, and you let it go. You see how much movement did you get? Now slide the skin up towards the shoulders and see how much movement did you get. Slide the skin over to the left, see how much movement you get. Release, slide the skin to the right, see how much movement you get. You move the skin in the 4 directions, seeing which direction can you get more movement, which direction do you get less movement. And the answers that you get tell you where the restrictions are. So here's my client. They're laying face down, right? So I put my hand on the back, you move the tissue, and every time, once you've moved the tissue, you take your hand off and let the tissue reset to normal. So let's say I can pull the tissue a fair bit up, about the same amount from side to side, but I can't pull the tissue down towards the hips very much. Here's what this kind of thing will tell you. With an adhesion, the tissue is stuck in one place. So you can pull tissue towards the adhesion, but it's hard to pull tissue away from the adhesion because it's all locked down. So here, I was able to pull the tissue up towards the shoulders, which means the lower back is pretty movable, but I was not able to pull the tissue down away from the shoulders. This inability to pull the tissue down away from the shoulders tells me that this is the area I'm going to want to focus on. This is the area where the restriction is going to be found. You can pull tissue towards the adhesion. You can't pull tissue away from the adhesion. So I have some highlights for you. At the top of page 612, the second bullet point starts with check the position of the pelvis. Highlight the last sentence in that bullet point. By palpating the ASIS and the PSIS unilaterally on one side, the tilt of the pelvis can be observed. So there's the feet, there's the hips. You check the PSIS and the ASIS. If they're level, the hips are level. But if one is higher than the other, then we have a rotation in the hips. So you put one thumb on the ASIS, one thumb on the PSIS on the same side, and you look to see if your thumbs are even. They will either be even or they'll be slightly off. The next highlight that I have for you is down towards the bottom of the page under palpation, skin rolling, and tissue excursion. The second paragraph starts with to perform fascial glide. Fascial glide is in bold. Start highlighting there. To perform fascial glide or tissue excursion, the therapist's hand contacts the client's skin and gently moves the skin over the deeper structures in the cardinal planes, superior, inferior, lateral, medial, to stretch the tissue to its limit in all directions. This is what we have done here. So you put your hand on the tissue, you pull it as far up as the tissue will go, you just see how much movement you get, let it go. It will snap back to normal. Pull it to one side, let it go. Pull it to the other side, let it go. Pull the tissue down. What you are looking for is which direction did you get the least amount of movement. You can pull tissue towards an adhesion, but you cannot pull tissue away from the adhesion. So the direction that you do not get a lot of movement towards, the origin of that movement is where the adhesion is found. So what I mean is, if I could not pull the tissue down the body, then the adhesion is up at the top. Is that clear to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. One more highlight on this page I want you to get. It's just a few lines down below the previous highlight. Highlight the therapist's hand and the client's skin must move as a unit, and the hand should not slide over the skin. We are not doing gliding strokes. This is more along the lines of a friction stroke. There's no lubrication. You are moving their skin. You're trying to determine how much movement can you get out of that tissue. So a couple more interesting things about fascia are listed in the box at the top of page 613. The first one is a tensegrity. This is actually a kind of sculpture. Tensegrity is used in architecture. If you do a Google search for a tensegrity structure, it'll give you really, really interesting pictures. That's going to be beside the point. The next term in bold is thixotrophy. You must know the definition of thixotrophy, so start highlighting there. Thixotrophy is the ability of a substance to soften as a result of warmth, pressure, or manipulation, and to harden in the absence of the same. Now, what we mean is to harden in the absence of warmth, pressure, and manipulation. So the hyaluronic acid in the ground substance allows ground substance to shift between a more gel state to a more fluid state. So this ground substance goes back and forth between being thinner like water and thicker like honey. This is what I was trying to explain when I pulled up the Play-Doh example, right? So when you don't massage the tissue, when it's not moving, it starts to harden and cool, like our Play-Doh sculpture. The ground substance, the liquid part of the connective tissue, becomes thicker like honey. When we apply heat and manipulation, right? So we warm up the tissue by massaging the area, we increase the temperature. This shifts the ground substance from more of a gel state back to its more fluid state, or its sol state. Sol is spelled S-O-L, sol state. When it returns to its sol state, the tissue is looser, we've improved circulation, there is a lot of blood flow to the area, the tissue becomes red, it also becomes much more malleable. This is something that you will know when you have achieved this goal, because the tissue will turn kind of a pink color, that the skin will turn red as a result of the techniques that you've been using. Now, another interesting thing that happens within connective tissue is, to put it bluntly, when you put strain on connective tissue in some direction, the connective tissue will strengthen along that line of force. The reason this can become a problem is because when that tissue becomes strengthened along the line of force, it's difficult for that tissue to adapt to forces in other directions. It really starts to become nailed down in one set pattern. Connective tissue must stay fluid. In order for it to function properly, it's got to be able to change its shape and adapt to different forces. If it becomes nailed down, then it's not going to adapt to different forces. It will instead tear and become injured as forces are applied to the body. The reason why it becomes nailed down is because of this ability known as piezoelectricity. The prefix piezo means pressure. Electricity means electricity. So, starting with piezoelectricity in bold, highlight. Piezoelectricity is the characteristic of certain materials to create and conduct an electrical current under pressure or stress. So when you put pressure on some materials, the pressure triggers an electrical an electrical output, an electrical field. We're going to skip the next couple of sentences, start highlighting collagen fibers in connective tissue generate piezoelectricity, which is conducted throughout the connective tissue. This weak current is thought to communicate changes in force on and in movement of the body. We're going to skip highlighting the next sentence. Connective tissue responds by either augmenting, reducing, or adjusting the patterns of collagen in the connective tissue in relation to the forces placed on the body. Highlight. When an area is under consistent strain, fibroblasts are stimulated to lay down more collagen fibers that become polarized and oriented along the piezoelectric charge that is aligned with the line of tension. In this way, the connective tissue is strengthened to adapt to the added tension. So, here is what we just said in a simplified form. Very simplified. The tissue should be able to move in all of these different directions. But because your job keeps you stuck in one position, or because you keep yourself stuck on the couch, not moving, when we apply consistent force to this tissue, let's say one direction and one direction only, what happens is the collagen generates piezoelectricity as a result of the pressure. This causes the collagen fibers to become polarized. Think like they become like a magnet. They get a north and a south pole. This causes them to align themselves. So all these new collagen fibers that get laid down along the line of force. So now this direction is very strong, but what about all these other directions? These are weaker. The tissue has become so strong along one line of force that it's neglected its ability to stretch and move along other lines of force. This serves to reinforce the very same tension that was put on the tissue in the first place. What I mean is, if you keep putting the same force on the connective tissue, it will get really good at resisting that force, and it will get worse at resisting other forces. This will eventually cause the tissue to become restricted. Now we can work on this using myofascial techniques. We can start breaking this up and restoring normal mobility and flexibility to the tissue. But this kind of thing takes time. It takes a lot of sessions. Okay. Do we have any questions over anything that I've gone over so far before we move on and get too far ahead?
Nope.
No.
Okay. So we're going to move down to the bottom of page 613 under direct myofascial techniques. Highlight. The goal of myofascial techniques is to release or reduce the collagenous crosslinks that cause restrictions and encourage the ground substance to change from a solid to a more viscous state. Stop highlighting there. We're trying to loosen fascia, you guys. We're going to skip on to the next paragraph on page 614. Highlight. The effectiveness of myofascial techniques depends on the drag or pull created by the therapist's hands moving over the client's skin and superficial tissues over the deeper structures. Therefore, no lubricant is used. This is why I pull up the example of an Indian burn. Myofascial techniques are more effective when we drag superficial tissue over deeper tissue. We're trying to warm and loosen this tissue. Do this for just a couple of seconds and you will notice, first of all, it is not very comfortable, right? It doesn't feel very good to have this done to you. Second of all, after only a few passes, you start to notice this tissue becomes much warmer. You may also notice some reddening of the tissue. It does not take long for these changes to start to take effect. What we are doing right in this act is stretching the fascia, creating, we're restoring mobility and movement. We're playing with our dried out Play-Doh sculpture. And as we said, if the tissue is thixotrophic, by adding warmth and manipulation, we soften the material and make it more malleable and more pliable. Next paragraph, highlight. Fascia is three-dimensional. The superficial fascia, which lies just beneath the skin, is continuous from head to toe. It is like a full body sweater. It's under your skin everywhere, under all of your skin. The next paragraph that starts with deep fascia is contiguous, I want you to highlight the last sentence in that paragraph. Heat, hyperemia, and a lengthening or softening in the tissue are indications that a release has happened. So, how do you know that your myofascial techniques are working? The tissue, the skin, will become hot, it will become red, and it will become softer to the touch. If you have put your hands on one of your fellow students or on a client and felt muscle that feels very hard and stiff, like a thick rope or a steel cable running through their shoulder, that is not what muscle should feel like. Excuse me. That is not what muscles should feel like. Muscles should feel like a balloon full of pudding. Squishy, soft, supple. When your myofascial techniques are working properly, when you are done, you will feel a difference. You literally put your hands on the skin and you feel it. You will feel a difference. It will feel warmer, softer, squishier than it did when you were beginning the massage. In the beginning, muscles will feel firm. They will feel stringy or ropey, kind of lumpy. You may be able to feel like little guitar strings in there. That is not the way muscle is supposed to feel like. It's supposed to feel like a balloon full of pudding. All right. The next the next myofascial technique we're going to talk about is skin rolling. Now, Lauren, Lee, and Crystal, unfortunately, you guys will never get the opportunity to learn skin rolling from me. Adrian, you will, and I want you to go ahead and count your blessings because I'm really good at skin rolling, and I'm going to let you know it hurts like a bitch. Skin rolling is not pleasant. It is not fun, does not feel good, it hurts. But it is crazy, crazy effective. Skin rolling gets a lot of work accomplished in the muscle tissue, but man, it hurts. So here's how skin rolling is done. You take the client's skin and you pinch it between your thumb and fingers. And then your thumb pushes, the fingers walk. And you walk this tissue up along the body. Now, if you're doing this very gently, you are not doing it correctly. When you start to lift this tissue, you want to pinch it up as high as you can get it and push and walk your fingers. This does not feel good, you guys. This really is uncomfortable. But I don't know if you guys can see. This camera isn't good enough. My arm has a very faint pink line where I just did that skin rolling. Whew, but it feels, now it feels good. Skin rolling always feels amazing after the fact. Like the results feel really good, but actually doing the skin rolling, oh my God, it hurts so bad. Every now and then I get a student that really, really loves it. but the vast majority of people, guys, it just hurts. But it is so effective. So effective. All right, so under skin rolling, it says skin rolling is used to both assess the condition and quality of the superficial fascia and to loosen and release constricted tissue. Highlight. Skin rolling is performed by picking up the skin and underlying superficial fascia between the thumb and fingers and slowly gathering up more tissue with the fingers as it slips out beneath the thumbs. So on my arm, doing it myself, I did it this way, but on someone's back, you would use both hands together. You keep both hands right next to each other, you lift up the skin, you walk with your fingers, and you push with your thumbs. So as your thumbs just kind of sit there almost like a snowplow, pushing through, your fingers do the walking. You gather up that tissue, you walk it down the back. Good stuff?
Yep.
Awesome. The next technique, words are hard. The next technique we have is muscle rolling. Highlight. Muscle rolling is a deeper form of skin rolling, used in specific areas where the therapist can pick up an entire section of muscle or muscle group and roll it between the thumb and fingers. So there are only a few muscles that really lend themselves to this technique, but those muscles are the sternocleidomastoid, this nice muscle right here, the upper trapezius muscle, this thick rope on the top of your shoulder, the bicep, the latissimus dorsi, this one, your lats, right? This one muscle that runs right on the side. If you put your hand on the side, you feel this little lump coming down from your underarm. You lift that lump up off the side of the body. It doesn't feel too comfortable, but that's lat dorsi. You can also work on the gastrocnemius, that is your calf muscle. So on the back of the calf, you've got those two bellies of muscle, right? They kind of make that W shape. Those muscles lend themselves really well to muscle rolling. Cross-handed stretches are also used. You may have used these in class, I'm not sure, but a cross-handed stretch, imagine your client lying face up. You put one hand on their shoulder, you cross your arms, the other hand goes on their head. So you're trying to stretch the head, neck, and shoulder. So one hand is on the shoulder, one hand is on the side of the head. You cross your arms and you lean into it. And as you lean into it, your hands move further apart, which pushes the client's head and neck away from each other, stretching the neck and the upper shoulder. Cross-handed stretches are very useful in myofascial massage. So when you sense like a line of resistance, like an area of tension, you want to stretch that out. You don't move away from the resistance. If you feel something that's tight in there, you want to find it and move into it. Stretch out that area where it's tight. On page 616, the next technique we have is myofascial gliding. And this is going to be kind of like an Indian burn. Again, no lubrication, you're going in dry. But in this one, you are letting your hand glide over the skin. So you start with a palm or with a loose fist, and you, again, no lubrication. You just slide your arm or your tool down their skin. Again, this is not the most comfortable thing in the world, but once you're done, that skin feels so much better. You've got to take it nice and slow. Fascia does not respond to quick changes. It responds to slow, sustained pressure if you're trying to get lasting results. So going down my arm, starting at my elbow, I'm going to go from my elbow down to my wrist. You start nice and slow. So I'm barely moving, but you are sliding the hand ever so slightly. very slow. So since I started at the elbow, I am just now about halfway down the forearm. Right, you're taking your sweet time with this. You're going to repeat this technique on a client 3 to 10 times. Just by the time you hit the wrist, you let go, you go back up to the elbow, and you start again. And you're just going to keep working this area. Just keep sliding the palm of the hand down the arm. You can switch tools and use a loose fist, right, like this, sliding your loose fist. Or you can even switch it up and use your own forearm. So your active forearm slides down the other one. Again, you got to go very slow. It is not the most comfortable thing in the world, but therapeutic massage is rarely very comfortable. When you hear the word therapeutic massage, I want you to translate it in your head. This is going to hurt like a bitch, but it is effective. Therapeutic massage gives you lasting, beneficial results, but it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. The next technique we have on page 617 is called the J stroke. This is pretty straightforward enough. You grasp the tissue using your thumb. You move your thumb in a J-shaped pattern. So let's say here I've got the arm. Right? So there's my hand. This is a terrible hand, but I've grabbed the tissue and I'm using my thumb. You move your thumb in a J shape. So as you move your hand down the arm, you just repeatedly make that same J shape. So it would look something like this. And after each repetition, you move your hand down just slightly. Good stuff? All right, on the next page, we have another myofascial technique, which is cross-fiber friction. Guys, we learned about cross-fiber friction when we did basic Swedish, right? This is the first technique we learned where we don't glide over the skin. We move the skin as a unit with our hands. Cross-fiber friction depends on you knowing what direction that muscle is running in. So let's say we have a muscle whose fibers, oh, this marker is about to die. Let's say we have a muscle whose fibers run in this direction. Cross fiber friction or transverse friction is when you apply your frictioning stroke perpendicular to the direction of the muscle fibers. By perpendicular, we mean at a right angle or across, like you're strumming a guitar string, you go across the strings, not along the strings. Okay? Cross fiber friction, you would plant your tool on the tissue above the muscle and then carry your stroke in a transverse or perpendicular direction. Now I do have one highlight on this page for you. So on page 619, under the heading Use of Cross-Fiber Friction, in the first paragraph, highlight the last sentence. It says, cross-fiber friction helps to reduce adhesions between fascial sheaths while at the same time encouraging the formation of a strong, pliable scar tissue at the site of the injury. Scar tissue can create fascial adhesions. So injuries that leave scarring can restrict the myofascia, which will lead to those postural distortions that we talked about. When the scar is still fresh By applying cross-fiber friction to it, we can loosen up the scar tissue, making that scar more pliable, thus reducing the restrictions that will develop later on down the line. If you guys have not heard, scar massage is a modality of massage, usually using myofascial techniques that we use to loosen up scar tissue so that it creates less of a distortion on their posture. One little tiny tidbit that I will also throw out to you guys, any tattoo is scar tissue. The needle damaged the skin, your skin grew scar tissue. So if you have a tattoo, that fascia is restricted. You would need to do techniques over those tattoos to loosen up the scar tissue. So if you have a client that has like a full back piece and then can't figure out why they have headaches, all right, moving on to the next page. I am on page 621. Under traction, I have two highlights for you. The first highlight is the first sentence. So highlight, traction, when used as a myofascial technique, is a longitudinal elongation method, usually of an extremity, to stretch and release fascial restrictions gently throughout the limb. Now, they used a couple of big words. I just want to illustrate so that we know what we're talking about. Here is our client. We say a longitudinal stretch, usually of a limb. So if we're talking about a leg here on my fancy little stick figure, if we're talking about a leg, a longitudinal stretch is to stretch the leg that way. So I would have my client lying face up on the table. You grasp their ankle, and proper body mechanics, you don't pull, right? You want to use your muscles if you can avoid it. You grab their ankle and you lean back. Put the force into your legs. Lean back. Pulling on that leg will create space in the ankle joint and the knee joint and the hip joint, which gives us an overall elongation of that leg. That is traction. Basically what we mean is pull on the limb to make it longer. The second highlight that I have for you is the second paragraph, first sentence. Highlight, to apply a traction release on the lower extremity, the client is supine on the table and the therapist stands at the foot of the table. So if I'm performing a traction release on this client, I am going to stand at the foot of the table. If I am applying a traction release on the arm, I am going to stand at the side of the table. That's it. Best not to overthink these things. Well, guys, that is our chapter for the day. That is myofascial. Make sure you guys complete all of the activities in MindTap. There is also a video about fascia that is found on YouTube. It is free. I recommend you watch it, but I will warn you ahead of time. Number one, it is very scientific. They use a lot of really big words, and the lady that narrates it has a thick French accent, so it's really hard to understand. But the pictures, though, and the video that they took inside of a person's body, so you can see fascia moving around and see really what fascia is like, it is a fantastic video. Even if you just want to put on some music and just watch the images, the audio it's in French and it's scientific French. So it's a lot to deal with. But it is a fantastic video. I really, really, really encourage you guys to pull this video up on YouTube. It's about 30 minutes long. It is called Strolling Under the Skin. Let me clean that up just a little bit. There we go. Strolling Under the Skin. Like I said, it's about 30 minutes long, and just the videos that they took inside the human body of living fascia moving around as tissues move around, I've never seen anything like it. It is fantastic. Definitely worth the 30 minutes of your time. Even if you don't give it the full 30 minutes, it's still definitely worth just looking at, just checking it out and seeing. And, turn the volume on. You might get hooked. It's not a bad video. All right, you guys. That is all the material that I have for us to cover today. Last chance. Do you guys have any questions? Anything that I can help you out with today?
Nope. Nope.
No questions.
Awesome. Well, you guys have my phone number and you have my email address. If you run into any problems, reach out to me. Let me know. Crystal and Lauren Lee, I may not be able to get to it today, but I will look into what you guys have. I do have access to Freedom on the Fort Myers campus, so I can pull up your grades and hours and all that stuff. If I move you into another section, I will email you a new link. And just understand, I will make sure that you guys get credit for everything that you have done. You will not lose anything.
Yeah, that was my fear. If we get switched, or if I get switched into my, I guess where I left off, I was just afraid of not getting credit for certain things or having things put in as 0 because I'm all of a sudden skipping off into muscles. So it'll all just correlate correctly, right? Once.
What I may have to do is give you some assignments to complete online, but I can work it in for you. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
you guys. I got you, boo.
Also, I have another slight question though. It has nothing to do with this. It has to do with the curriculum in general. I do have only a few. I think I have like 10 massages to do. I'm expecting to finish massage online and then go off into skin when we actually get to go to school, because it seems like this is going to take a while for us to be able to go back to schooling. How am I going to get my table massages in? Do I like have to wait till I physically am in school in skin and finish the massages there?
For massage, yeah, you're gonna have to wait. Now, skincare, you can do facials and stuff. What all the other students are having to do is record themselves doing services, put it on YouTube. But massage, I don't want you to like.
That, and I think it's a good idea.
Do what?
Yeah, I feel like that's weird to have a full hour massage on YouTube.
I completely agree. And just having somebody like massage their boyfriend and then upload it on YouTube, and like, what if there's a draping malfunction? Like, it's too sketchy. It's too risky.
Exactly.
Maybe air massage, but like, I don't know, because you don't even have chairs at your house. Like, no, I got kind of sketched out talking about doing massages on YouTube without really knowing what you're doing, right? Because if you mess up the draping and suddenly your boyfriend's exposed all over YouTube, like, you can't use that video, so you don't get credit for it. I felt like that was too sketchy. Unfortunately, I think you answered your own question. We will finish hands-on whenever we're all allowed to come back in the building.
Okay, that's no problem.
Now, when you get into skin, facials you can do and record. Certain things like that we'll be able to give you service credits for, but massage just doesn't lend itself to that kind of thing.
Okay, it's no problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. You guys enjoy your afternoon and have a good weekend, and I will see you guys next week.
Bye.